For centuries, whispers traveled across oceans, tales of a mythical warrior class. Women, as fierce as any man, forged in the crucible of war, who defied all expectations of their time. They were called the Amazons, but not from ancient Greece. No, these warriors emerged from the heart of West Africa, from a kingdom known as Dahomey. Their story is one of unparalleled bravery, brutal conflict, and a legacy largely forgotten. This is the story of the Agoji, or the Mino, as they called themselves, our mothers, an elite all-female military regiment whose very existence was a paradox to the European world, and whose methods were as shocking as their resolve. They were the backbone of a kingdom forged in blood, thriving on warfare and a grim economic reality. But how did these extraordinary women rise to such power, and what was the true cost of their forgotten war? The Dahomey kingdom, nestled in what is modern-day Benin, was born into a brutal world, constantly under threat, particularly from the powerful Yoruba state of Oyo. Dahomey faced a critical manpower shortage. Every able body was needed for defense, even and perhaps especially the women. Their origins aren't a single heroic moment, but rather a slow, grinding evolution born of necessity. Early accounts speak of female elephant hunters, the Gbeho, under King Wegbaja in the mid-17th century. These women were already proving their physical prowess in the unforgiving African bush. Later, under King Agaja in the early 18th century, a more organized female bodyguard unit emerged to protect the royal palace. It was a pragmatic decision. Men were forbidden in the royal quarters at night, making female guards a logical choice. But these weren't mere attendants. They were armed, trained, and fiercely loyal. It was King Gezo, ascending in 1818, who truly transformed these disparate groups into the formidable fighting force we know as the Agoji. He wasn't just expanding a unit, he was institutionalizing an elite army. He provided them with uniforms, regularized their training, and drastically increased their numbers. By their peak, they comprised up to a third of the entire Dahomean military, a force of thousands unmatched anywhere else in the world. To join the Agoji was to commit to a life of extreme discipline and unwavering loyalty to the king. Recruits, some as young as 8, underwent a brutal regimen designed to strip away fear and instill absolute obedience. They practiced with live ammunition, endured grueling endurance tests, and were taught to ignore pain. One observer recounted seeing them scale walls of thorn bushes, emerging bleeding but unbowed. They were known for their stoicism, their ability to perform intricate battle maneuvers with chilling precision, and their absolute fearlessness. Celibacy was largely the rule. They were considered wives of the king, a symbolic bond that tied them directly to the state, preventing personal attachments from compromising their military duty. Their weaponry was diverse: muskets, blunderbusses, and the iconic gankpasi, a razor-sharp, two-handed sword, often described as a giant folding razor capable of decapitation with a single swing. They were masters of ambush, swift and silent, striking before the enemy knew what hit them. European accounts often remarked on their ferocious charges, their preference for close-quarters combat, and their terrifying effectiveness. But to truly understand the Agoji, we must confront the uncomfortable truths of the Dahomey kingdom. This was a state built on the spoils of war, and its primary source of wealth was the transatlantic slave trade. The Agoji were not merely defenders, they were instruments of conquest and capture. They participated in brutal raids on neighboring villages, capturing men, women, and children to be sold into bondage. These slave hunts were meticulously organized military campaigns. The Agoji, with their ruthless efficiency, were often at the forefront, responsible for much of the kingdom's grim harvest. Furthermore, Dahomey practiced human sacrifice on a significant scale during their annual customs. Captives, often taken by the Agoji, were offered to the ancestors to ensure the kingdom's prosperity. This practice, alongside the slave trade, horrified European observers and solidified Dahomey's reputation as a Black Sparta. fearsome, powerful, and deeply disturbing to Western sensibilities. As the 19th century drew to a close, the era of Dahomey's independence was challenged by a new formidable enemy, the French colonial empire. Armed with modern repeating rifles, machine guns, and artillery, the French represented a technological leap that even the fearsome Agouge could barely contend with. In the First and Second Franco-Dahomean Wars of the 1890s, the Agouge found themselves facing an enemy unlike any they had known. Despite their legendary bravery, their discipline, and their willingness to fight to the death, they were outgunned and outnumbered. Battles like Dogba saw the Dahomean forces, including large contingents of Agouge, launch ferocious frontal assaults, only to be mown down by superior French firepower. Accounts speak of Agouge warriors fighting hand-to-hand against bayonet charges, showing incredible tenacity, even as their ranks were decimated. Many preferred death to capture. In their very last battles, fewer than 100 Agouge remained fit for duty out of thousands. They were the last to surrender, their spirit unbroken, even in utter defeat. With the French conquest, the Dahomey kingdom was dissolved, and the Agouge, once the pride of their nation, were disbanded. Their legacy, once so feared, faded into obscurity, dismissed by colonial narratives that focused on primitive barbarity rather than their unique military prowess. However, in recent years, their story has seen a resurgence, most notably with the Hollywood film The Woman King. While bringing global attention to these incredible warriors, such portrayals often walk a fine line between inspiration and historical accuracy. The film, for instance, depicts the Dahomey kingdom as fighting against the slave trade, a stark contrast to the historical truth of their deep involvement. It's a reminder that history, especially that of marginalized groups, is complex and often uncomfortable. The true story of the Dahomey Amazons is not just about their fierce fighting spirit, but also about the brutal realities of the kingdom they served, a reality that includes their active participation in the slave trade and human sacrifice. The Dahomey Amazons, the Mino, were a force of nature, a testament to human resilience and ferocity. Their story is a crucial, if sometimes difficult, chapter in African history. It reminds us that courage knows no gender, and that true understanding comes not from simplified narratives, but from confronting the full, unvarnished truth of the past. Their war may be forgotten by many, but their legacy, in all its complexity, deserves to be remembered.